Yo, desert god, desert god, what am I to do? Who cares? Who cares? Who dares wins? Not. That's it. That's what you got. Lone wolf, young wolf, on thin ice. You used to be so nice. You used to be so nice. Young man, you paid every price. Kept on paying for lost time, and you're not in your prime no more, no more use, no more use. Desert god, desert god, desert god. I hate you. I can't live without you. What else are you gonna take from me? What else are you gonna take from me? What else are you gonna take from me? Desert god. What else are you gonna take from God? What else are you gonna take from me? What else are you gonna take from me? Desert god. What else are you gonna take from me? What else are you gonna take from me? I don't understand what you are. What am I to do? I don't understand what you are. I hate you, desert god. I hate you. I hate you, desert god.
Hey, Jason, good to talk to you again.
You?
So I don't know if I was actually taking your advice or going against your advice when I started pursuing Enochian. So I did not have the 15 or 20 years of formal magic training, but I started, I mentioned when I talked to you once before, in the church world, in an esoteric, branch of Christianity when I was a teenager. A lot of things like prophecy, really deep prayer and fasting. And it's, I really felt called to Enochian, but as many people who have experienced it will attest, my life, without going into any detail, it followed the same pattern as a lot of things I've heard you and others say. I mean, I had a beautiful home, a lot of equity, a lot of good things, going in my life, business. And it really all came collapsing down, but in a way that it seemed like it was meant to be. My challenge is on the good days, on the days that I really feel connected and synchronicities are happening, my faith is high. I feel like I'm walking in lockstep with the universe, exactly where I'm supposed to be. Those are the good days. The bad days, I feel really foolish. I feel like I have repeated my mistakes of my religious days. I feel like I have some self-delusion going on. And I'm just really struggling with consistency. As you mentioned before, the highs are really high and the lows are really low. And I'm just really struggling with consistency. There are some days that this feels so real to me that nothing could shake me from it. And then there are days that, like I say, I feel really foolish. And I'm just wondering if you have any advice or maybe some insight from your years of the ups and downs yourself to maybe help help me get through these next few months and maybe prepare me for what's next.
Yeah. Well, beautiful. I mean, that's just how it is, I think, to a certain extent. I mean, certainly that's how I feel. And I guess my question, so when you say consistency, do you mean consistency of practice, consistency of faith, consistency in what sense?
Well, it all kind of ties together, really all of it. I mean, when I'm able to, do my meditation and that kind of, work on a consistent basis, I mean, I tend to have good results. I just have a very difficult time staying there. There's just been so much loss, and there's part of me that feels like this is the way it was supposed to happen. Like, my life was supposed to be completely shaken apart from the direction I was heading, and that, I honestly feel like I was being called, like I was being drawn to magical practice and to Enochian work my whole life. I mean, it's like the last 25, 28 years seem to have all been leading toward that. But, I think a lot of people who do this will relate to, just battling with depression and anxiety. And the thing that's the real struggle right now is I'm running out of time. Last year I had time for things to kind of fall apart and to recover. But, I'm reaching this point where, I have to be consistent now with my business, with balance. I have to be consistent with balance. And if I don't get some consistency soon, I'm afraid I could be heading for some real trouble. But I'm already in now. I mean, I can't abandon this practice now. I'm too far in, to go back. I feel like I have to see it through at this point. But yeah, does that answer what you were asking me?
Yeah, it does. I just went through something similar. I mean, I lost just about everything and gained a lot too. But I just got my Enochian board down from the attic last night, and set it up for the first time in probably 5, 6 years. So, and a lot has been lost in the meantime. I think that it's kind of like life, At a certain point with life, what can you say? But I'll say this. Have you read Liber Librae, the Book of the Balance?
No, sir.
Highly recommend it. It's a Crowley document, but it's really a Golden Dawn document. It's his version of a book that it's only, when I say book, I mean it's only like a few pages, but it's I'll put a link. Everyone should read that. I highly. It's basically the whole thing is about that, which is the maintaining balance along the path, right? So there's the link, and it's only 21 lines. It's very short. I highly recommend that. And this is the instructions on how to maintain balance. And balance on the magical path is critical, and it's a critical thing that everyone must master, where you don't want to totally shut off magic. You have to do the work, right? But you also have to maintain it in such a way so that you don't go so far in that you slip, right? And that means simply balancing responsibilities in your life. And I've constructed my life in such a way, and I have since my late teens, that magic is also my job. So that's a really weird life to live, but it works somehow, right? But kind of, but that's not ideal for everyone, obviously, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it. So I'll also say this, however, in life, in my experience, we go through many times where it seems like everything's being taken away, right? It sucks. What can I say about it? It really sucks. And it seems like there are many times where, try as we might with all of our might, things fail. And even sometimes it's the harder we try, the less it works, and when you're a kid and something doesn't work out, it sucks. But when you're an adult, a marriage fails, or the real loss happens, true loss, right? It's not fun and games anymore, right? But on the other hand, or a career fails, a job loss, or death, and a loss of a project, equity project, any of this stuff. But I'll say this: magic is always there, and it's the golden thread running. No matter how crazy of a situation I've been in my life, magic has always been there for me. And at the end of the day, you're going to die anyways, right? We're all going to lose this. This is a temporary home. So in a way, all of these things, these minor losses, are preparation for the big one. And people die, and then ultimately we die. And so what are you left with? What can you take with you anyways? Not you can't even take your identity with you, it's like, and so magic is such a preparation for that. And I can't sell it like that. Hey, come do magic, prepare to die. It's like, but that ultimately at a certain level, that is what it is. And Buddhism is too. The great letting go. And it's not just letting go, but it's returning to what you really are and what is true. I teach magic in such a way that, like even in Adept and things like that, in Fortuna, I put a lot of emphasis on real world stability.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just rock it hard on, for instance, Enochian, you can be blasting through level after level on the astral plane, but your physical life can fall apart. And it's like your physical life will fall apart on its own anyway, simply because that's the nature, that's old age, sickness, and death, or the nature of existence in a body, right? And then the Buddhists would say, well, you have the most precious thing in the world. The most precious thing in the world is human incarnation. So don't waste it. And by them wasting it would mean chasing temporary illusions, right? For them, they would say to not waste it is to practice the Dharma. And we can do that. We can also do Western magic or whatever it is to explore and understand the nature of the soul. And then that is true wealth, right? It's what's real, I think, ironically or paradoxically, or perhaps that's just the way that reality is. The things that seem most intangible are actually the most real things, because it's what we're left with. Like your mind stream is the only thing that you are left with at the end of the day, and in theory is the only thing that carries over between lifetimes. So it's funny. When I was 22 or 23, Joel Barocco, does anyone know who that is? He was this infamous chaos, it still is, infamous chaos magician slash troll who used to do zines in the 80s. He was the first person to publish Hakim Bey in England in the 80s. And he's basically lived as an itinerant Taoist sage on the outskirts of society for decades. And he currently pops up. He has a forum, but he just pops up from time to time on the internet to fuck with people. And extremely unpleasant individual, but also it has some wisdom for sure. He's a real magician. And he said to me once, I met him in a pub in London at the Plough, which is where Crowley and Sperry used to drink next to the British Museum, when I was, I think, 22 or 23. And he said that we were drinking, and he said it was me, him, Phil Hine, and this other guy that is not a public figure. And he said to me, if I was to have any, I'll never forget it. He said, if I was to have any advice to a young magician, it would be this: let your life fall apart. Go ahead. Just let it happen. See what happens, right? And then I thought, that asshole. And then he really is a deeply unpleasant person, ironically. But I thought of this. Maybe it was only a few years later, I was in a situation where I had been thrown out of Canada, and I literally had nothing to my name except a six-pack and my breath. And I thought of him then. And then I posted that on MySpace, and he showed up and said, well remembered. It was interesting. But I mean, time, loss, Saturn, mortality, aging is not, it's not easy topics, right?
Not for the faint of heart.
But life is not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's the human condition. I will simply say that I guess there's a certain question, which is magic causative or not? And I'm not sure. I think it depends on the situation. But even as you've alluded to, even if it is causative in such things, is it, as you said, you feel that it's as it should be, right? So if you feel like you're on the right track to your true will, whatever that happens to be, then, not only is it worth it, there's no transactionality at these levels, but it is as it should be. I mean, what does the book of the law say? Let me look. I had this memorized, but I want to make sure that I get it right. I think it's in the Hadi chapter. Chapter 2. So book of the law, chapter 2, verse 9. Remember, all ye, that existence is pure joy, that all the sorrows are but as shadows. They pass and are done, but there is that which remains. And this is spoken from the perspective of Hadi, which to some extent represents the Atman, or the core center of consciousness. So at the end of all your adventures, there's still that same thread of consciousness that is enlightened awareness, which is in theory what you're attempting to awaken to and stabilize within. So these experiences can be helpful goads to that. I think that
I was going to say, if we have enough time, I'd like to share with you what I really feel like I'm supposed to be doing, because I feel like you could either encourage me to stay the course or maybe advise me if you feel like I am a little self-deluding here.
Well, I'm happy to observe and listen, and I will decide if it's my business to say one way or the other.
Fair enough. As I began this practice and started keeping a magical journal, I don't have very many experiences where I see things. I mean, I see geometric shapes sometimes. Of course, when a really good friend of mine uses psychedelics, that helps. But the most powerful experiences that I've had over my entire life, not just since I called it Magick, has just been coming away from a time of meditation or deep reflection and just having a clear understanding, being able to, for instance, one of the most powerful and positive things that's come from this has been my ability to forgive and to let go of things that I had conscious or logically I had forgiven. I mean, if any of these people had, if they stepped up, to my door and needed me for anything, they would never know that I was still carrying a lot of the hurt and anger for years. But I knew that, certain things could trigger and it would be right there. And through a lot of the things that I've gone through your courses, I've just noticed this ability to understand and to let things go and to heal, which has just been wonderful. And to be able to go through this loss. I mean, I was a self-made millionaire in my early 30s, following a lot of the Napoleon Hill philosophy of building business and building wealth. And but here, this is what I've really felt as I started writing things and writing. And what I was going to say is I don't tend to see a lot of visions. I don't hear voices. I just tend to, when I feel like I've been in the presence of something higher, whether it's I know we all debate whether it's a higher part of our own consciousness or something angelic. It's like I just walk away with an awareness and a feeling and a certainty that I didn't have before. And the most profound of those was that I needed to change occupations. And that is to become a scientist of sorts, and not to do what you do, but to apply it to regular world activities. In other words, I built a family. I have a beautiful little girl. I have primary custody of my little daughter. But it's like I feel called to start over, building a business and building a family and building a life as a scientist of the magical arts, as someone who does not make decisions from the monkey brain level, It's real difficult at times to not go out and work when I know that's what I need to be doing. But it's like I'm feeling called to make my business an experiment. In other words, my primary occupation is to make myself one with this universe and to flow in unconditional love. And I want to build a business that's ruled by nothing but unconditional love. I want to attract employees and clients and partners who are there because they're supposed to be there. And to manage, I mean, we all have to use, mundane, leadership skills and management tools. But, I want to lead and guide my people 100% with unconditional love. And when things are not as, they should be, the key components of this have been unconditional love, complete non-reaction when things aren't going the way that they need to go, to not react, to go back into that space of magic, to go back into that solitary space and to begin envisioning and allowing my true will to really dominate my thoughts and saturate my mind so that I'm manifesting this life instead of going out and making it happen. And I feel like in the last 15, 20 years, when I had incredible success, it's because I was doing this by accident. I was stumbling across these things, but not doing so with consistency. But as someone who was a devout, Christian, Pentecostal Christian, tongues, prophecy, all of these things, and, being taught to forsake the world and just, live your life for Jesus, and, seeing the collapse and the destruction and the devastation that leaves in most people's wake when they, sell out for Jesus.
Why is that? I don't want to interrupt your flow, but I'm just curious what you mean by that. Like people, why does that create devastation?
Well, just for instance, in extreme fundamentalist Christianity, where a total devotion to Christianity or a total devotion to the church or the cult or the guru means forsaking responsibilities and having very, very strained relationships with family members who don't see the world the way you see it, and divorces. And, my parents wound up divorcing, not that they had a perfect marriage otherwise, but I mean, it ultimately came down to the church I was in as a 12-year-old kid. It wasn't mainstream. It wasn't what they believed. They were Baptist. This was a very, end time prophetic type, very cult-like. And frankly, my mom clearly was discerning and picking up on a lot of the danger that was there, but didn't really know how to show it or express that. It was just, it's not what we are. I think it's evil. I think it's of the devil. And it just, I lost so much. And it wasn't until I came across like Napoleon Hill teaching, Dale Carnegie, Zig Ziglar, and really learned how to take control for myself and stop trusting in a God or anything else to do it for me. And I realized, hey, I was born with a brain and, 2 arms, 2 legs, and everything I need to go out and build a life with. And, it was when I became very atheistic and very agnostic in my belief system that I actually created a pretty, happy life, and a, good, few friends, none. I've never been someone who had a large social circle, but I had enough that I was happy. And, but then after I had all of those trappings of success, I found I was still so empty of purpose. But I guess, to get back to the thing that I want to kind of present for your judgment and assessment is, if you look through my magical journal and the notes that I made in the early stages, over and over, I was counseling myself or a higher presence was counseling me to just devote myself to this, just as I would have if I was a Christian pastor and devoted myself to that work and then trusted God to somehow make the other things in my life work. I feel that I need to devote myself to this and allow my higher self, my true will, to guide and dominate, and to not act in any way just because that's the way I always did it, but to literally go into the Enochian temple and go into this inner space and get my marching orders day by day. And that if I can do that day by day, that, month by month, year by year, I will build the life that I've been called to build, and that and be able to love the people and touch the people and change the lives that the things I've done in the past sporadically, but not with the consistency and with a lot of ups and downs. And it's like I say, Jason, on the days and the weeks where things are flowing and things are working and the synchronicities are sometimes a little overwhelming, it's very easy to believe and to feel confident and very optimistic. Hey, this is working. This is going somewhere. But then there are those weeks and those months sometimes where it just feels like I'm making a fool of myself, and, time is running out, and, money's running out, bills are piling up, things that, fell apart or, coming back to bite me in the ass. And I'm really struggling to find my way back to that place of peace and calm where I can be led, I think, to use one of your phrases, to be led from the higher part of our nervous system, a different part of our nervous system, the wiser, part of us. And, I'm still in this stage where I really don't know if what I'm encountering, are these angelic beings that other people encounter? Are these just aspects of my soul that, we all have, but, different types of practices allow us to communicate with. But I definitely know one thing, another thing that comes to me very, very strongly, and it feels like several times when I'm outside and just meditating under the stars, one thing that comes to me consistently is stay the course, because whether this is real, whether I'm deluding myself, whether this is, I still come out better when I follow this inner voice and this inner guidance than I do when I reject it.
Beautiful. And the short answer is yes, follow it. The long answer is, I think that these are such beautifully phrased things. And I think that, look, I mean, the path of Magick is the path of becoming more and more yourself. And I think that when we get inner guidance, the thing that, if you're really in the flow, the thing that causes the wreckage is often resisting the call to adventure. Like that's every movie, right? Every movie you get the hero. The hero gets the call to adventure. The hero says, "No, I'm out of that game. Not me. Like I'm too X for that. I'm too old for that. I'm too young for that. I can't do that. I could never be that person." And then what happens, right? What happens after that point?
Something they wind up, their life falls apart, and something drives them right back to where they were to begin with.
Yeah, they get pushed right back to the plot line, and then they're. But that's every movie. So you'll notice there's never a movie where nobody refuses the call to adventure. So it's for whatever reason. So that would be a boring movie. Somebody's like, "Well, I'm so awesome that I'm just going to save the day." End of the movie, right? But that's not how humans work, right? That's not how stories work. So the hero refuses the call to adventure, and when we do that, like for instance, I was so hard into Magick till I was 26, and then I decided I need to grow up. And then what did I do? I went and worked in advertising. I worked in various things. I tried so many things to make things work, and nothing worked, and it all fell apart. And I got forced, it felt like forced, and it was very painful, to teaching Magick. And then everything worked, and I'm happy mostly. So I just as brother to brother, I mean, we're on this path. I think that this is how it works. And I think, and more broadly speaking, with spiritual people, I mean, I'm sure many people on this call resonate so fully with what you're saying, and felt similar things, or feel similar things now, or if not, maybe they will, which is, when you're a truly spiritual man or spiritual woman or non-binary, when you're truly spiritual and you're in the flow, and you feel that calling, or just if you have a calling to do something great with your life and you resist it, nothing's more painful than resisting your own soul. Hardship is not painful. I mean, look at the people who've changed the world with nothing. Like Gandhi in India, they have the phrase "kings with straw mats." That's all they got. And nothing is more valuable than, it's not even that nothing is more valuable, it's that nothing is real except your own internal feeling, in a sense, because like, as I know, you can be in a relationship with somebody or married to somebody for years and you never even know who they are. And but you have your own internal burning intense experience of that relationship. And then perhaps one day you wake up and realize that even that was my own hallucination.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just is the nature of how the human brain works. And so, we always, of course, want something outside of us to fulfill us, but it doesn't work like that. And Magick teaches us that, life teaches us that. So at the end of the day, if you have a passion, you have a calling, you have to follow it, and the inner guidance won't let you down, I don't think. And the other thing I'll say is, like, man, like you said it so beautifully. I mean, you came out, the whole thing, you started off with the whole thing's based in love and love for other people. You can't go wrong with that, right? Like, if that's where you're coming from, like, how can that go wrong? That's so beautiful, right? There's so little of that in the world too. I think that as spiritual people, I certainly have the tendency, we have this tendency to downplay ourselves and say, oh, I'm just this, I'm just that, I'm just some crazy person, or am I a fool? Am I, but man, like, in the grand scheme of things, this is what people need.
Right.
Really deeply. They lost their souls. I don't know why, but it's people are hurting. And I'm not saying that people should necessarily be in the healer role, but I'll say this. I mean, it's so interesting that you said that you would put yourself in the scientist role, and you're talking about needing to make sure things work. And time and things like this. Well, if you're a scientist with Magick, don't you think that a big part of that is figuring out very clearly and precisely, both for yourself and for other people, what works and what doesn't? Maybe that's part of it.
Well, I tell you, and you said something that really helps me kind of put this in a more concise way. And I feel a little less foolish after, talking with you, but I really feel like I am being called and compelled to live a life of just unconditional love. And, my dad has a definition for that. He's a Christian pastor. And, he says unconditional love, that love is the unconditional giving of oneself to another, expecting nothing in return. And I fought that for a long time. I thought, even in a relationship, I mean, you have to be honest and realistic that we're all needing a balance there. But I feel like I am being called to really put this to the test. If you live a life of unconditional love and walk in this centered state, this state of higher guidance, and then just keep a record of it and document, I don't have to do this the rest of my life, but maybe do it for 6 months and prove, the fear is that if I do this for 6 months without any thought to myself or without any thought to the consequences, I could wind up in a much worse shape, than I am right now. But I still feel like it's what I'm supposed to do, is to, build a business 100% focused on going out there. There are a lot of my business serves small businesses. And there are a lot of small business owners out there who are hurting, and they're trying to survive. They're having to be super creative and adapt to this post-COVID world. And that's what I'm good at. I'm good at, adapting and being creative and helping small business owners use, the newest technology to grow with. But instead of, hiring people to go out focused on building, a $200,000 residual or things like that, I'm feeling called to go out and find people who really and truly have a missionary heart to help small business owners to get through this and to prosper, and to hire employees who really need this opportunity, who, but for this, they may not have an opportunity to go provide for their families, and to genuinely remove myself from the equation and to just flow in divine love and unconditional love, and to trust what manifests. I mean, we all talk about these secrets and occult secrets and the secrets of the Masons and on. The thing that keeps coming to me is that it seems like the one recurring theme of all these deep secrets, it seems to keep going back to 2 or 3 things: unconditional love,
that's right,
non-reaction, and being guided by the higher part of our consciousness.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where I started the call with, when I do that, I find, I walk in a very happy, blissful state. I'm struggling to walk in that state in a consistent way. And it seems like, if a man or woman could genuinely walk in a meditative, guided state, I don't mean, just sitting in a temple for 8 hours a day, but I mean, starting a day that way, but then using, and I think you even talk about this a lot in your courses, using this power, this clarity, this this flow that you find through spiritual practice, and then continuing to flow in that day by day, and going into your office and going into your interactions with other people, continuing to allow these higher, dimensions of love to flow through you and to touch others. And I'm really feeling called to do that. I'm just struggling to do it.
Man, it's beautiful. And I think just look, I mean, it's like you're fine. It's like, how could that not be the meaning of life? First of all, it's like, right, what you're saying. And second is, you have so much, you really touched me. I think you have so much strength, and it takes so much strength to do what you're saying. And yeah, of course I struggle to do it. This is, you're describing what I'm trying to do, but I'm really, even to love unconditionally is so hard. I would be lying if I said it wasn't. But these are what the ideals we struggle towards, but we know they're right, and that's half the battle at least. And so then you have to walk in it. But you read the stories of even the saints, are constantly afflicted and troubled, and that's what the path is. You're not describing. It's a feature, not a bug. You know what I mean? It's like you're describing things as they are, and it's so beautiful. And I think that just practically speaking, what you're describing of going out and helping small business owners who are hurting, man, that's so needed, and it's so beautiful. And I don't see how you can't be successful at that. And not just successful, but fulfilled, because you're going to have people that will be saying, "You helped me, thank you." If you're like an angel. You know what I mean? So and it's just, I'm trying, breaking up a little bit, just hearing you say this, it's so touching. Yeah. Did you just do it?
I appreciate the encouragement. I needed it.
Yeah. Well, it's right what you're just saying, and I'm happy to provide this because it's right already. You just, sometimes we need somebody to be like, but you already know the answer, and I think it's, man, we live in such a troubled world. You don't need me to say that. We live in a world where the little guy is being forgotten, and not just the little guy, but the middle-sized guy.
Anything less than the top 1%. I mean, the top 1%, they're thriving through this. They've quintupled their wealth through this, and everyone else is being, left by the wayside. But I believe that's the opportunity. I mean, maybe that's how we flow into this age of Aquarius, this new age. And like, you say your mission is to, bring the Western esoteric, belief and magic to this generation. And because we do need it. I mean, nobody else is out there looking out for us. I mean, the churches aren't looking out for us. The major business, the government's certainly not, caring about us. I mean, if we don't band together and find our higher angels and start taking care of each other, where are we?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, this is why I teach magic and why I love magic. Because it's goofy, it's weird, it's cartoony, but damn, it's like, when no one has your back, it'll have your back.
Right.
And obviously it involves faith and God and spirit and all of that, but it also involves your own actions. And that's why it's so important. It's a get up and do it pursuit. And yeah, I mean, hell, send me your info. I mean, I'm building my business larger, so I'm trying to get things expanding, and I think it's encouraging for me to hear also, just because like obviously my whole life I've doubted what I'm doing. I mean, I don't pretend to be anything that I'm not. I mean, it's like, and I've had judgment from family, friends, society my whole life. It's like, what the hell, I'm basically like decided to permanently be a permanent goth adolescent is kind of how people have seen it for so long. But interestingly enough, in our current situation, it makes sense when nobody else's stuff does. Mm-hmm. And suddenly people want to know. And it's been like that for a while now, but even more so now, I think. And it's like, it's like, yeah, we got magic. It's like, you look around and say, hey, anyone else got a better idea?
Right.
So, right. So what do you know? Next thing you know, all of a sudden it's a very powerful position to be in. But power in what you're describing, which is true power, which is trying to come with as a loving man from the truth as you understand it, which is the same as how I understand it, and help. Because I think at the end of the day, we can sit here and I'm happy to do it. We can sit here all day long. This is the conclusion I came to fairly recently, 3-4 years ago. We can sit here all day long and talk about the Kabbalah and the lore and Crowley did this and that and Enochian and the gods and rituals and, like compare rings and stuff like that. But the only thing that matters, I used to say this. I used to tell people, what really matters is how you feel about yourself at 4 a.m. when you can't sleep and there's no one around. And it's just you, yourself, and I. How do you really, and there's no performance to do. How do you really feel about yourself then? I used to say that. Then I realized that's important. But the key to that, the real key to that is not how good you can meditate or what grade you took or this, that, the other. The real key to that, or even the techniques of personal therapy and meditation and personal emotional processing and all this, all of which are really critical. But ultimately, the thing that matters is what can you do for other people, right? And I was so, I'll share this with you. Maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not. But I for so long had a complex about how am I this guy? I pigeonholed myself. I turned myself into a freak. Really, and I'm ashamed of myself because now I can't take it back. I've written books on this and I'm this person and I could have been anything. And I finally, my breakthrough moment that I had is I had a moment with myself where I realized, you asshole, to myself, what are you talking about? Like, this is an ego trip. You think that by playing small and making yourself less, that somehow you're decreasing your ego or you'll be less offensive to people, or the things that have helped people and can help people. So why are you sitting on your ass saying, oh, woe is me, I got a medical degree? Right? That's essentially what it is. It's like, go do, it's not about you. It's about where the overlap is between, and it does not even necessarily magic. It's about where the overlap is between what you know. You're talking about the abilities, the incredible abilities you have to help small business owners that are unique to your background and your experience. So those experiences are critical. People need that, and it's not like when, not to drill down on it too hard, but it's like, whatever, people need that. And it's like, not just they need it like it would be nice. It's like their kids are going to starve otherwise. Like that's the situation. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that.
And it can make the difference in whether they live their dream and find their purpose and their place. My dream is to help others find theirs, and it's that's when I'm most fulfilled, is when I know that I'm playing a small role in helping others, find their more magical way through life.
Yeah. And what could be more important, and the other thing I've learned is like, I used to be so, cynical, I still can be, but like when I was particularly as a teenager, it was like, oh, like this is such woo-woo. It's the only thing that matters. It's like you hear things like, oh, I'm more fulfilled. I'm living my purpose. And it's like, oh, okay, like you're off on your own trip in the light, fantastic thing. It's like, no, that's actually the only thing that matters, because when you are doing what you're talking about, when you're in the flow of who you're meant to be, you're following inner guidance or whatever language you want to use, where you're in the flow of what you're supposed to be doing, everything else really does fall into place from that. We can break that down Kabbalistically if you want to be scientific about it. You get Atziluth, you get the spiritual level, and then it comes down into Bria, the pattern for your life. Then it comes down into Yetzirah, which is the astral in your dreams, your visions, your inner representations, and finally it comes down into the physical. But if you don't get Atziluth right, it's the same. So everyone should know, if you build if you just go for material wealth, if you're just building a saya for its own sake, right, it'll fall apart because it's not in line with the higher functions. If you just build Yetzirah for its own sake, by tripping on 1 billion magic mushrooms and getting really good at magic and astral travel, that'll fall apart too because it's meaningless. Mm-hmm. It's cities, it's self-delusion. Well, if you build Bria for its own sake, You build the most complex, intricate pattern for how you're going to live this awesome life, and you're going to integrate all your skills. And like, I sat down with a pen and a pad and came up with I came up with the master plan for my life, and it all seems perfect on paper. That's going to fall apart too, because it's not rooted in spirit, absolute, right? Which is without form, but you know it when you feel it, right? You perceive it from all the lower levels, and it is the guiding light, the lamp, the magician's lamp, the lamp of the hermit, right? The light of God, whatever you want to call it, LVX, right? Whatever you want to call it, it's the divine spark. When you're in line with that, the rest falls into place of its own accord. And so that's what people in our culture often are missing. Not always. It's there just under the surface, and it's not hard to turn on. It really isn't, because people are really trusting and innocent and sweet deep down. But in our cultural moment, people have, in many cases, rightfully rejected religion because they've seen that it's abusive and hollow, and the people professing it often don't actually believe it. And that's tragic in a way. It's not always the case, but it often is. And so they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. So I offer Magick, which is just my thing to do as my, from my own lineage and tradition. It's like, I offer Magick because it's DIY. You can, here's tools, turn it on yourself. Then you don't need to trust a priest.
Right.
But you do need to turn it on because you know it when you feel it. And it manifests as the type of stuff it doesn't manifest as being Doctor Strange and throwing fireballs out of your hands. Although, yes, that would be very cool. And if anyone knows how to do it, tell me, because that's an awesome party trick. It manifests as what you're talking about. I'm building a business to go out and help people from a place of love. From my heart to yours, like, beautiful. I mean, it's my heart. It melts my heart. Please, you have my full encouragement, because what could be more important right now, and I don't see how that couldn't be a success, because you know how to build a business anyway, so you know the technicals of it.
Well, and just right back at you, Jason. I know I told you the last time we spoke, I would be so lost without the Magick.me school and with what you do. I mean, I was seeking and trying to make sense of all of this, over the years, and just all of man, if you don't already know this stuff, like if you don't, and you get on the internet and start, you learn Egyptian, and you learn all of these, pagan, and then you learn a little bit about Kabbalah, and it just, and they all seem to be contradictory, but something that was beautiful about what you do is you made even one of the best gifts you gave me was helping me reconcile some of the anger I had toward the Christian church and fundamentalist religion, because, you said one time, I didn't grow up in it. So I didn't have the damage and the preconceived notions. And these are things that need to be healed in those of us who did grow up in it. And, but, it's just, you've built something that brings it all into one place. And my life has actually made so much more sense since I've been able to learn the things that you present and that you have. And I mean, you definitely keep doing what you were doing. Any self-doubt that ever creeps in, I told you before, my little girl and myself, and our lives will forever be better. Whatever they are, they will forever be better than they were because of the work you do. And I really appreciate you too, Jason.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Yeah, and as you get your business going, let me know, because I probably need.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no telling what kind of things we might could partner on in the future. So.
That would be cool. Yeah, you have my email. So, but just that aside, I think, I couldn't encourage you more. I mean, not just because you're from what you have shared of your business plan, it makes a lot of sense. But just, I mean, look, you came at that with just that feeling of unconditional love and wanting to help people. You can't go wrong from coming from that place. I don't think. And as you're giving back to me now, you're giving love back to me. It's like when we help people, when we give people love, they give it back. It's like that can take the form of financial, but it can take the form of so many other things as well. But like financial success is a form of love returned.
Sure.
And that's something I wish people would think of as well, because as you know, people associate so many negative things with business, and they assume that it's the thieving and all these
right.
things. And it's not. It's about service. not when it can be. It's like when it's done right, as
Right.
the way that you're expressing. It's like that's it becomes it becomes a way of doing the types of things that we're talking about. It's like you can't help people for free. I mean, you can, but it can't be the only thing that you do, because then you go broke. There's nothing left of you, I mean, I provide all kinds of free content, but if I was only doing things for free, there would be nothing to pay for the free content.
And you couldn't keep doing it.
Yeah, it's not possible. I'd just be, but yeah, it's like, look, I think my final point is this. When you're in flow with what you truly know and feel that you're meant to be doing, then everything works, right? And when you resist it, it doesn't. And like, whatever else you might want to say about me, I think people could probably, to a certain extent, I'm a somewhat fairly intelligent individual, right? Like I have a lot of skills.
Right.
When I have been resisting what I'm supposed to do, people have refused to hire me to sweep floors. Like I've been in points in my life where I had to ask for a reference, the head of an ad agency in New York on Madison Avenue that I used to work for, to be a reference for me for sweeping floors at a cafe. And they still refuse to give me the job. Like that's a low point, right?
Right.
But that's what, like, the doors are closed when you're not following inner guidance. When you do, everything just seems to open. So
it feels like there's this angel we come into the world with, who knows better than we. And I think the big transition for me has been to stop seeing it as an external God, the gods that other people have described and have, portrayed, and discovering that we each come into this world with our own angel, and getting to know that being. And if the religions and the spiritual teachings, if the one thing they all have in common, if that's correct, it's been the theme of this conversation. It runs on unconditional love. That's the frequency, the flow. I mean, if there is a God, if there is a higher being, it is that substance of pure love. And that's when we flow in that giving and receiving, somehow we're connected, even when we don't understand it fully.
Yeah. And isn't all of life a process of coming to know that and conversing with it?
For sure. I appreciate you, Jason.
And what I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And love is the law, right? It's like, do what thou wilt. Do what thou will. Your path in life, what you know, your true will, what you know you're meant to do. Love is the law. Love under will. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. There you have it. And I think that's what it means. And when you're coming from that pure love, even if what you're doing appears to manifest in a dark or confusing way, if you're coming from pure love, you can't go wrong. I don't think you can, because of what you just said. It's the nature of the universe. I mean, I know this is cheesy, but I think that if we, obviously I like to get complex and technical and academic and all this, but if we really take it down and say, God is love, as St. Augustine said, and then stop fighting over the details, that would fix about 90% of what's going on in the world.
Yeah, it'd be a beautiful place. For sure.
It sure would, and we need people like you to remind us of it. And so, because people forget, it's not complicated, but people get tied up in the bullshit, and they need people to remind them. And I think that it's what the world needs now. The world doesn't need another timeshare plan. The world doesn't need a new weapon. The world doesn't need a new cryptocurrency pyramid scheme. It doesn't need some new technology. It needs people to return to their souls, and it needs a lot more love, because there's not a whole lot of it. There is. I mean, it's easy to get down and see the bad things, but
when you look for it, it's there. I mean, it's in every song, every movie, and every life story. If you get to know somebody. And you were talking about small businesses getting a bad rap. I mean, there've been many times I've gone without a salary and, exhausted our savings and credit so that our employees could get paid. Most business owners I know would do that. I wasn't anything special, or different.
Yeah.
Most business owners I know, they'll sacrifice a lot for their clients and their partners. boys. And, it's a place where you do find a lot of unconditional love outside of, DNA and blood, family and relationships. And
yeah, small business is a family.
It is. That's what I was about to say. It gives you the ability to build a family. If you maybe don't have a large family, it becomes a family for sure.
That's a great point. That right there is such a beautiful point. That helps me think about it differently. I mean, like that's such a beautiful point to make to people, because it doesn't that immediately snap in like all the right ways of thinking about things.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure as always, and thank you for the kind things you said. And are you okay if I post this on YouTube at some point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That'd be cool, because I think this would help. This would be a powerful conversation for people to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And I would say good luck, but I don't think you need it, because when you got magic, you don't need luck. Just fall.
That's a good point.
It's true. I mean, what you've described is the formula. You have the secret magical formula for making things work. That's what creates luck, is when you're in the flow of your will and love. Yeah. So
thank you, Jason. Appreciate all your time.